What if the thing you call laziness is actually the body collapsing after years of standing on a stage where love, respect, and safety were never free? What if your exhaustion is not weakness at all, but the unpaid bill for a life spent auditioning your worth every single day? Because people who are truly lazy usually protect their energy without guilt, while you burn yours like a ritual just to earn permission to exist. You call yourself undisciplined, but look closer, and you will see a nervous system that has been performing under invisible judgment for far too long. Even when nobody is asking for proof, your chest still tightens as if a tribunal is waiting for evidence that you deserve space. So you work, explain, improve, smile, fix, respond, over-deliver, and collapse. Not because ambition drives you, but because fear quietly does. The fear is simple and brutal. If I stop proving myself, people will finally see that I was never enough. And once that sentence takes root, rest stops feeling like recovery and starts feeling like exposure. That is why a free afternoon can make you more anxious than a hard deadline ever could. Silence becomes dangerous because, in silence, there is no applause to temporarily numb the old suspicion that your value might be conditional. So you fill the emptiness with productivity, availability, usefulness, politeness, and self-correction, hoping constant motion will hide the terror underneath. But motion is not the same as peace, and function is not the same as self-respect. Many people were not raised to feel loved. They were raised to feel evaluated. They learned that being easy, bright, helpful, impressive, and emotionally convenient kept the room calmer and the bond more secure. Over time, that adaptation becomes identity, and the child who survived by reading the room grows into an adult who cannot leave the stage. You stop asking, "What do I feel?" and start asking, "What version of me will keep everyone comfortable?" That is not laziness failing to wake up. That is the self being slowly erased by performance. You are tired because constant self-monitoring is one of the most expensive habits a human mind can maintain. Every conversation becomes an exam, every mistake becomes a verdict, and every pause becomes a threat. And because the pressure is internal now, nobody has to control you directly for you to remain controlled. This is where the trap becomes elegant, because you start calling the cage responsibility, maturity, discipline, or being a good person. You say, "I just have high standards," while your body whispers that it has not felt safe in years. You say, "I am only being accountable," while shame stands behind the sentence holding a knife to your throat. You say, "I do not want to disappoint people," but the deeper truth is that disappointment feels, to you, like abandonment in disguise. So you become hyper-capable, hyper-aware, hyper-reliable, and privately hollow. Everyone praises your strength, while almost nobody notices that your strength has been built like armor around a wound. The world often rewards this pattern at first, which is why it becomes so difficult to question. Bosses like it, families depend on it, partners benefit from it, and society calls it admirable when a person bleeds quietly. But being useful is not the same as being valued, and being needed is not the same as being loved. A machine can be useful, and a servant can be needed, yet neither condition guarantees dignity. The dangerous part is that external praise can keep a broken inner contract alive for years. You start believing that exhaustion is the price of relevance, and self-abandonment is the rent you pay to belong. Then one day, you cannot start the task, answer the message, make the call, or open the laptop. And because the collapse looks passive from the outside, you accuse yourself of laziness instead of recognizing accumulated depletion. But the body is not stupid. It rebels when it can no longer survive the terms you signed in fear. Burnout is often the nervous system refusing to keep funding a false identity. The mind says, "So try harder," while the body says, "I would rather shut down than keep living as an unpaid employee of your shame." That shutdown can look like procrastination, numbness, brain fog, avoidance, scrolling, sleep, forgetfulness, or sudden inability to care. None of those states feel noble, which is why people hide them and then punish themselves in private. But hidden punishment does not restore energy. It only deepens the split between who you are and who you think you must imitate. Carl Jung warned that the persona is the mask we wear to meet the world. The mask itself is not evil. Everyone needs one to move through society without collapsing into chaos. The problem begins when the mask eats the face and your performed self becomes more protected than your real one. Then your entire life becomes a negotiation between acceptance and authenticity loses almost every round. You smile when hurt, say yes when resentful, stay available when empty, and call it kindness because truth feels too expensive. But every false yes sends the same message inward. My limits matter less than their comfort. Repeat that message enough times, and the soul does not become peaceful. It becomes resentful, tired, and strangely hard to motivate. Because motivation dies where meaning is replaced by self-erasure. People think energy comes from pressure, but sustainable energy usually comes from congruence. When your actions match your values, your system spends less power managing internal contradiction. When your actions betray your values, even small tasks start to feel heavy because part of you is resisting silent humiliation. This is why someone can work 12 hours for a dream and feel alive, yet feel dead after 30 minutes of performing obligation for approval. The difference is not effort alone. The difference is whether the self is included or abandoned. If each task secretly asks, "Can I earn the right to matter now?" then no amount of completion will ever feel like enough. Because the goal was never the task. The goal was relief from shame, and shame always changes the price. Today it wants perfection, tomorrow it wants sacrifice, and the day after that it wants you smaller, quieter, and more apologetic. Shame is a tyrant that never signs peace treaties, which is why obeying it only trains it to ask for more. That is the hidden power dynamic inside so much exhaustion. You are being ruled by an inner judge wearing the voices of the past. Sometimes that judge sounds like a parent who loved achievement more than vulnerability. Sometimes it sounds like a classroom, a religion, a culture, a relationship, or a workplace where worth was measured by output. Sometimes it sounds like your own voice, which is why it becomes so hard to recognize as inherited violence. But cruelty does not become truth just because it learned your name. And urgency does not become purpose just because your pulse rises when you ignore it. A lot of exhausted people are not failing at discipline. They are trapped in survival dressed as ambition. They are trying to outrun the old moment when being imperfect costs them closeness, dignity, or emotional safety. So they stay busy to stay chosen, polished to stay tolerated, and productive to stay beyond criticism. Yet criticism still reaches them, because no performance can permanently calm a wound built from conditional worth. That is why the perfectionist is rarely at rest even after succeeding. Achievement gives them a brief anesthetic, not a home. And anesthesia is expensive, because the dose must keep increasing to hold the same fear down. Eventually, you wake up inside a life that looks competent from far away and feels strangely unlived from within. You have responsibilities, contacts, routines, maybe even praise, but almost no direct contact with your own appetite for life. You do not know what you want without first imagining how others will judge it. You do not know when you are tired until your body starts malfunctioning. You do not know whether you are kind or merely afraid of conflict, wrapped in a beautiful moral vocabulary. This is the real tragedy of chronic proving. It does not only drain energy, it also distorts identity. You become legible to everybody except yourself. You can read a room in seconds, but you cannot read your own resentment until it turns into coldness, delay, or disappearance. You can sense other people's disappointment before it lands, but you miss your own grief until it hardens into numb obedience. That numb obedience is often mislabeled discipline by the outside world. But discipline without self-contact easily becomes self-violence with a good reputation. Real discipline supports life. False discipline maintains captivity. Real responsibility includes limits. False responsibility erases the person carrying the burden. Real goodness can tell the truth. Performative goodness stays agreeable even when the soul is suffocating. So the turning point begins with a hard sentence. Not everything you call virtue is healthy. Some of it is fear with excellent manners. Some of it is grief wearing makeup. Some of it is the child's ancient strategy still running inside an adult body that can now choose differently. Nietzsche wrote, "Become who you are," and most people hear inspiration where there is actually a demand for brutal honesty. To become who you are, you must first see where you have been living as a rented character. You must notice which smiles are purchased, which goals are borrowed, and which forms of exhaustion are caused by self-betrayal rather than hard work. You must stop confusing being admired with being known. You must stop confusing being needed with being safe. You must stop confusing constant effort with genuine devotion, because devotion can be steady while fear is always hungry. This does not mean quitting every job, disappointing everyone, or becoming cold and selfish overnight. It means ending the inner contract that says your worth must be renewed through continuous evidence. It means letting rest be rest, not a courtroom where your mind prosecutes you for existing without output. It means answering one simple question before you say yes. What is this costing the self I have to live with? It means allowing some people to misunderstand you rather than endlessly translating yourself into something easier to consume. It means noticing that guilt is not always a moral alarm. Sometimes it is just the sensation of breaking an old obedience. At first, this change will feel wrong, because bodies trained by conditional love often mistake familiarity for safety. The new boundary feels cruel. The new pause feels irresponsible, and the new honesty feels dangerous. But that feeling is not proof you are failing. It is proof you are leaving a role that once kept you alive. Expect withdrawal, because overfunctioning can become an addiction with social rewards attached to it. Expect grief, because the version of you that kept everyone comfortable was still trying, in its own tragic way, to protect you. Do not mock that version of yourself. Thank it, then retire it. You do not heal by declaring war on your past adaptations. You heal by refusing to let them run the throne anymore. Little by little, energy returns when self-respect returns, because the body finally stops fighting the life you are forcing it to live. Then work becomes cleaner. Rest becomes deeper, love becomes less performative, and your no begins to protect your yes. So no, you are not simply lazy. You are tired of being a product, a shield, a servant, and a resume pretending to be a soul. May you recover the part of you that never needed to audition for dignity, protect your inner life well, and subscribe for more conversations like this.